Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome you on behalf of the President. I want to begin by acknowledging those who are here who have made today's accomplishment possible. Secretary of Interior Bruce Babbitt, Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman, Roger Kennedy, Director of the National Park Service, and George Frampton, Assistant Secretary of the Interior for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I also want to single out Senators Bennett Johnson and Frank Murkowski for their leadership of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, Senators Jeff Bingaman and Bill Bradley and Dale Bumpers, Senators Ted Kennedy and Nancy Kassebaum, and Senator-elect Bob Torricelli, Representatives George Miller and Don Young for their leadership of the House Resources Committee, and Representatives Patrick Kennedy, Representatives Lewis, Matsui, Pelosi, Richardson, Bollert, Hansen, Rockema, and Regula. Also, Senators Boxer and Feinstein are not here, but I wanted to mention them as well. In just a few moments, President Clinton will sign his name to a law that deepens America's historic commitment to protecting our national parks. And by signing this bill, he will send an important message. We must be true to the notion of stewardship. We must leave this earth for our children, not just in as good shape as we found it, but better. This will not be the first time that President Clinton has been true to the notion of stewardship. Over the past 4 years, the President has worked hard to make the water we drink and the air we breathe cleaner and safer. He has given communities the right to know about environmental dangers. He has fought for more safeguards for our children to protect them from pesticide residues on their food. He has reformed our Superfund program, making it possible for us to clean up a record number of toxic waste dumps. In our inner cities, the President has offered incentives to business to help restore poisoned urban lots that no one had dared touch. And Bill Clinton has made it easier for companies to do the right thing by the environment by offering common sense reform, scrapping excess rules, and increasing net results. President Bill Clinton knows that when we talk about growing our economy and protecting our environment, it should not and must not be an issue of us against them, or what we can afford or not afford, or Democrat versus Republican. The issue at stake is the quality of the lives we lead. Today, because of his actions, more families will be able to enjoy the beauty of our national parks. It is my honor to present him now, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and to the members of the administration, and especially to the large delegation of members of Congress who are here from both parties. I thank you all for coming and for creating this legislation which will protect and expand the treasure of our national parks. This legislation affirms our solemn commitment to say from one end of our nation to the other, we will be good stewards of the land that God has given us. This bill will create or improve almost 120 parks, trails, rivers, historical sites in 41 of our 50 states. It turns the Presidio, a former military post in San Francisco, into a sanctuary of nature and history. By establishing a nonprofit trust to manage the Presidio's property, it gives us a blueprint for national parks that one day will be able to sustain themselves without government funds. I thank Senator Boxer and Feinstein and Representative Pelosi for their work on this. The legislation preserves the Sterling Forest in the New York-New Jersey border. This new park, just 40 miles from New York City, will put nature within reach of millions of families of all backgrounds. It will safeguard a watershed that provides clean drinking water for the people of New Jersey. It will show that a forest that was left for dead a century ago can be brought back to life and protected today. I thank Senator Bradley and Senator-elect Torricelli and Representative Henchy especially for their work on this. The legislation will establish the Tall Grass Prairie National Preserve in Kansas. 400,000 square miles of this prairie covered our continent when Lewis and Clark made their great journey. Today, only a tiny fraction of it remains. This bill will help to restore 11,000 acres of this uniquely American landscape with its 9-foot tall grass and rich plant and animal life. I'm pleased to say that it was also give the state of Kansas its very first national park. I thank Senator Kassenbaum especially for her work on this, as well as Secretary Glickman, who supported this project when he was a member of Congress. The legislation does much more. It establishes the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail in Alabama, the 54-mile stretch of road that Dr. Martin Luther King walked in 1965 to remind Americans of how far we had to travel to live up to our ideals of equality and justice for all. And I thank especially the man who walked a lot of those miles with Dr. King, Congressman John Lewis, for his leadership in that regard. This bill also gives us the resources to upgrade housing for Park Service employees. Many of these dedicated public servants have been spending their winters living in 30-year-old trailers that were supposed to last only one summer. That's going to change. I must say that one of the more rewarding aspects of being president has been visiting our national parks and getting to know the people who get up every day and put on the National Park Service uniform. It is amazing the level of talent, training, and commitment those people bring to this job, and the sacrifices, financial and other, that they're willing to accept to do the work that they love. But they deserve a better deal, and for the service they do to us, I thank the Congress for providing decent housing to them. I'm also proud of what this bill does not do. It no longer contains provisions that would have taken land away from Virginia's Shenandoah and Richmond battlefield parks. It does not open the Sequoia National Park in California or the Red Rock region of Utah to development that I believe would be destructive. I also want to say finally that I hope we can see more legislation like this in the next 4 years. This bill is a model of how we ought to work together. This bill had strong Republican support. It had strong Democratic support. We said we were going to put our national treasures beyond partisan politics and put the people of America, their future and their environment above that. And I was very gratified by it. And I want to say again to the members here and those who are not here who played a leading role in this legislation, it is a model of how democracy ought to work. So now I want to sign the bill. I want to say that I ask Congress to continue to work with me in this same spirit, to protect the environment, to strengthen the community right to know protection, to toughen punishment for polluters, to clean up 2/3 of the existing toxic waste sites for the year 2000. We can meet these challenges if we work together in the future as we did to pass this terrific piece of legislation. Thank you very much.
How close are you to naming a new Secretary of State, and will former Senator George Mitchell be the nominee?
I haven't made a decision. I'm working on it. I'm working on a lot of appointments now. And I will do it when I'm ready to do it. But it's a very important decision.
So, Mr. President, what will you say to the congressional leaders, especially the Republicans, when you meet with them this afternoon to encourage this idea of bipartisanship?
Well, I think first thing I like to do is to have the first chance I have to thank them in a room together for what happened in the last 6 or 8 weeks of the last Congress, where you had the Senator Castlebaum, Senator Kennedy's bill passed, a number of some other health reform legislation passed. We had the minimum wage, small business pension, adoption tax credit legislation passed, the welfare reform legislation. It was a remarkable period of incredibly productive legislation, and that shows what we can do when we work together. And I would just encourage us to do that, beginning with balancing the budget and campaign finance reform. And but there are lots of other things we have to do. And so basically today, I just want to reaffirm my commitment to try to recreate that spirit and keep it going.
But Senator Lott in particular has said he would like what amounts to almost an admission from you and from the Democrats that using words like cut, slash, wreck, referring to Medicare and the ads was, as they put it, demagoguery and unfair. They want you to set the record straight, so to speak, before they cooperate.
Well, I didn't read what he said exactly in that way. I think what we objected to, I don't think that it was going to come back again anyway. The $270 billion option is not there and no longer needed, which is one of the problems with our budgeting process. You know, when the inflation rate in healthcare has come down so much because of the increasing competition and efficiency that no one any longer believes that we need to do that again, I don't believe. So the question is whether we can basically take up where we left off, where the differences between us are smaller. And I think that's just, we'll just have to talk about how to do that. Senator Lott, to be fair to him, has got to have time to meet with, he's got some new members, got to have time to meet with his caucus, develop a strategy. But I think we'll be working together on this. I certainly hope we will.
So was it a remarkable period? We were driven by the fact that there was an election coming up. The Republicans.
It does concentrate the mind. It may have been driven by that, but the point is, the people ratified what was done. I mean, I don't think there is no way to read the election results as they came out as a repudiation of the last 2 months of the last Congress. It clearly has to be seen as a ratification of the last 2 months of the last Congress and what was done. And so it shouldn't take, I'm not always quick on the uptake as I ought to be, but it shouldn't take another year and a half to figure that out. I mean, I have a fresh memory of what happened, and I think that's the way the members will receive it as well.
Mr. President, President Lott says the first move is up to you on Medicare. Are you ready to make the first move?
Well, under the rules, I have to present a budget, and I'm certainly prepared to present a budget. But in the end, we will still have to reconcile. We don't want to get into that I don't agree with every characterization that was put on our economic program in 1993. I think that's why we're in the shape we're in today. We got that interest rate down, we went forward. But there's no point in us going back and litigating what we thought of each other's programs that we didn't agree with. We need to focus on how we can reach agreement now. We're in this boat together, and we have to paddle it together. And that's what the American people want. We got to remember that the American people are in the boat with us. And we're not nearly as important as they are in their future. And so it's time for us to each pick up our paddle and row. And I think that's what we'll wind up doing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Do you consider supporting the balanced budget amendment given the changes in
Do I expect the Congress to support it?
well, no,
Would you?
Would you consider supporting it given the changes in
Well,
the Senate?
my problems with it always were, I lived under one as a governor, and we produced 12 balanced budgets, and I'm trying to get back to a balanced budget system here. My problems with the constitutional amendment were always more a question of how to manage the larger economic problems of the country. The nation's budget are different than a state, is different from a state. And I just want to make sure that if we have one, it needs to be clear in terms of how, and it needs to really give us the possibility of being in a recession. You don't want to wind up with a Congress someday in a recession raising taxes or throwing unemployed people off health care because they're trying to get to a balanced budget, then you could actually wind up making the deficit worse. And if it sets a framework that says that in the 21st century, in the economy we're going to be living in, other things being equal, we ought always to be balancing our books. I agree with that. I just don't think we may tie our hands more than we will achieve. So what I'm going to focus my energies on is getting a balanced budget. I don't have a vote in the Congress. I mean, my voice counts presumably, but I don't have a vote. But I do have the responsibility to help the American people get the balanced budget, and that's what I'm going to focus my energies on.
So you don't reject an amendment out of hands?
Well, I don't believe we need it, and it can't be an excuse. For a long time, I was afraid it would be an excuse to throw the burden on somebody else by the Congress, because by definition, you have to have it down the road to take a while to ratify. But my belief is that I don't believe that we need it, but if we have it, it ought to be able to be implemented in a way that actually works and gives the country what it needs to manage a recession. Because, we won't always have, someday down the road, we'll have another bad patch in the economy. I mean, we just know that's going to happen. No one has a total trouble-free life. No country has a trouble-free economy someday down the road. And we just don't want an amendment to wind up making our recession worse. And causing us to do things that are counterproductive that you would never do in a recession. In a recession, you would never raise taxes, or you wouldn't throw people who are unemployed through no fault of their own off of health care eligibility because you're trying to balance the budget. So that's the only thing I'm considering. The escape hatch is good, and we'll manage it the best way we can. The American people we're very practical people. We'll find a way to deal with the amendment. If the amendment, the thing I want us to do is to get, if you look at this global economy, look how much more economic activity was generated in America when we lowered the deficit and lowered interest rates. And it totally overwhelmed the contractionary effects of reducing the deficit by reducing public spending. And we would be better off in this kind of economy always targeting a balanced budget, unless there is a substantial recession, in which case we don't want to raise taxes on people when they don't have as much money as they should anyway. That's what I'm worried about. We can get that over that. So that's why I'm telling you, I'm going to be working on getting the balanced budget in there. If we get it, if we can get the Congress to pass a plan that will achieve that, we'll have the desired economic effects, short-term and long-term. And then whatever happens with the amendment will happen.
Thank you, Mr.
Cool,
President.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Guys, we can put the lights clear out for now. Let's cut the lights, please. Come out now for that. Yeah. Guys, we can get equipment later.
They'll get it.
Phone sound or whatever.
Yeah, well, we're going to be there, and the zoo starts again.
Yeah, I know.
I just